The moment that wasn't meant to be seen, the cafe wasn't supposed to matter. To Daniel Whitmore, billionaire CEO of Whitmore Dynamics, it was just another forgettable stop between a board meeting and a private jet. A narrow roadside diner tucked between frozen asphalt and a gray winter sky. The kind of place you only enter when your schedule collapses or your child refuses to eat anywhere else. Tonight, his son had refused everything. Daniel sat stiffly in the corner booth, tailored coat still on, fingers clenched around a cooling cup of black coffee. The cafe buzzed, softly clinking plates, murmured conversations, the hiss of an old heater fighting the cold. He barely noticed any of it. His attention was fixed on the boy across from him, Eli Whitmore. 8 years old, brilliant mind, fragile world. Eli sat hunched, hoodie pulled halfway over his head, eyes locked onto the table as if the wood grain were telling him secrets no one else could hear. His fingers tapped in a precise, anxious rhythm for taps. Pause, for taps again. A pattern Daniel had learned not to interrupt. "You need to eat something," Daniel said quietly, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "Just a few bites." Eli didn't respond. The waitress approached their table, notepad in hand. She was black, maybe late 20s, wearing a faded blue apron tied too tight at the waist. Her hair was pulled back neatly, face tired but gentle. "Sir," she said softly, "can I get him anything special?" "We have soup. Warm, plain." Daniel glanced at her, irritation flickering before he could stop it. "He doesn't." He paused, exhaled. "He has autism. He won't eat unfamiliar food." The word hung heavy in the air, as it always did. The waitress nodded slowly, not with pity, not with discomfort, but with understanding. "I see." She scribbled something on her pad. "I'll bring you your order shortly." She walked away. Daniel rubbed his temples. He hated moments like this. Not because of Eli Never, because of Eli Never, because of the stares, the whispers, the quiet judgments from people who saw a withdrawn child and a powerful man who couldn't control his own son. Across the cafe, 2 men glanced over. One leaned toward the other and muttered something. They laughed. Daniel's jaw tightened. Eli's tapping grew faster. "Hey," Daniel whispered, leaning forward. "It's okay. Just breathe." Eli suddenly pushed his chair back with a loud scrape. The sound cut through the cafe like glass shattering. "No," Eli said sharply. "Too loud. Too many." Heads turned. Daniel stood halfway, panic rising. "Eli, please, I want to go," Eli said, voice trembling now. "I want to go now." Before Daniel could respond, the waitress was back. But she didn't come to the table. She went to Eli. She crouched down slowly, keeping a careful distance, her movements deliberate. "Respectful, hey?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's loud today, huh?" Eli froze. No one ever spoke to him like that. The tapping stopped. Daniel opened his mouth. "Excuse me," but something stopped him. The waitress wasn't intruding. She wasn't forcing eye contact. She wasn't asking questions that demanded answers. She was just present. "I know a quiet spot," she continued gently. "By the window. You can watch the snow. It falls in patterns. Did you know that?" Eli's eyes flickered upward for the first time. Snow drifted past the glass, slow and steady. "For taps." Pause. "For taps," the waitress smiled, not at him but at the space near him. "I can bring you something warm. You don't have to eat it. Just hold it if you want." Eli swallowed. Daniel's heart pounded. This was risky. This was unfamiliar. This was Eli nodded once. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. The waitress stood and walked away. Moments later, she returned with a small bowl of soup and a plain spoon. She set it on the table, sliding it gently toward Eli, then stepped back. No pressure, no instructions. Eli stared at the steam rising from the bowl. He lifted the spoon. Let it hover. Then carefully he took a sip. Daniel forgot how to breathe. Across the cafe, one of the men scoffed. "Kid's too old to be acting like that." Daniel turned sharply, fury flashing. You want to say that again? The man raised his hands. Relax. Just saying. Before Daniel could move, the waitress stepped between them. Sir, she said calmly, her voice firm now. This is a place for kindness. If that's a problem for you, the door works just fine. The cafe went silent. The man muttered something under his breath and turned away. Daniel stared at her. Stunned, she hadn't known who he was. She hadn't cared. She returned to Eli, crouching again. You're doing great, she said softly. Eli took another sip. Daniel felt his throat tighten. In boardrooms, he commanded fear. In markets, he bent outcomes to his will. But here was a woman earning minimum wage, standing up for his son without hesitation, without recognition. Without reward, she rose and finally looked at Daniel. Sometimes she said quietly, people don't need fixing. They just need space to be understood. Daniel nodded. Unable to speak, she walked away. Eli finished half the bowl for the first time that day. He smiled. Daniel reached for his wallet, pulling out several bills. Too many. He stood, walked to the counter, and placed them down. For her, he said. The cashier blinked. That's more than the check. Daniel shook his head. It's not enough. As he turned back, he saw the waitress in the kitchen doorway, laughing softly at something a cook said. She looked exhausted, honest, real, and suddenly, Daniel Whitmore, the man who owned cities in glass and steel, smaller than he ever had, because he knew something then. This moment wasn't an accident, and the woman who had just fed his autistic son was about to change his life in ways money never could, but he had no idea how cruel the world had already been to her, and what it was about to take from her next. Asterisk. The price of Kai and Dionysus. The shout cut through the cafe like a blade. Marissa, get out here now. The warmth that had briefly filled the room vanished. Conversations died mid-sentence. The hiss of the heater seemed louder, harsher. Daniel Whitmore paused at the door, his hand frozen on the handle. Marissa, that was her name. She emerged slowly from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. The calm she'd shown Eli was gone, replaced by something tighter, more guarded. The man who had shouted stood behind the counter. Frank, the owner. Thick arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes sharp with irritation. What did I tell you about giving away food? Frank snapped. I didn't give it away, Marissa replied, voice steady but quiet. I rang it up under, don't lie to me, Frank barked. I saw you. You made a special bowl. Extra broth. That costs money. Daniel took a step forward instinctively, but something held him back. This wasn't his world. Not yet. Marissa lowered her gaze. The child needed it. Frank laughed harshly. This isn't a charity. You want to save the world? Do it on your own time. The words landed heavy. Daniel felt Eli tug gently at his coat. Daddy, Eli whispered, anxious again. She's upset. I know, Daniel murmured. Frank leaned closer to Marissa, lowering his voice, but not enough. I've warned you before. You're always slowing down, always playing hero. Customers complain. You cost me business. Do my job, Marissa said. And I do it right, Frank scoffed. Your job is to serve, not to think. That was it. Daniel turned back toward them. His presence shifted the air instantly tall, composed, commanding without effort. Is there a problem? He asked. Frank sized him up, noticing the coat, the watch, the way the room subtly leaned toward him. No problem, sir. Just handling staff. Marissa's eyes widened slightly when she recognized him, the father of the boy. Daniel's voice stayed calm. You were yelling at her. About my son.
Right.
Frank waved dismissively. She broke policy. Daniel reached into his pocket and placed his wallet on the counter. I paid more than enough. And even if I hadn't, to anyone who shows my child kindness has my gratitude, not my disrespect. Frank's smile was thin. Sir, with all due respect, this is my business. And with all due respect, Daniel replied, Your business is losing something far more valuable than money tonight." The cafe was silent. Frank's face flushed. "You don't get to tell me how to run. I get to tell you this," Daniel interrupted. "If you punish her for compassion, that says everything about you." Marissa stood frozen between them, heart pounding. She wasn't used to being defended, especially not by men like him. Frank exhaled sharply. "Fine. Go home, Marissa." "Shift's over." Her stomach dropped. "That's not," she began. "Go. We'll talk about this tomorrow." She knew what that meant. Tomorrow usually meant fewer hours. Sometimes none. She untied her apron slowly, hands trembling just enough to betray her composure. She placed it on the counter, nodded once, and turned away. Daniel watched her walk toward the back door. Shoulders squared despite the weight pressing down on her. Eli tugged again. "Daddy? Did she do something bad?" Daniel crouched to his son's level. "No, she did something very good." Eli nodded, thinking hard. "Then why is she sad?" Daniel didn't have an answer. Outside, the cold slapped Marissa's face as soon as she stepped into the night. Snow crunched beneath her worn shoes. She pulled her coat tighter, breath fogging the air. She hadn't cried inside. She never did. But now, alone, under the flickering streetlight, her eyes burned. She thought of her small apartment, of the overdue notice taped to her fridge, of her younger brother's tuition bill she still hadn't paid, of how every act of kindness seemed to come with a cost she could barely afford. A car door opened behind her. Marissa. She turned sharply. Daniel approached, hands visible, voice gentle. "I hope I'm not overstepping." She wiped her face quickly. "It's fine. I'm used to it," he frowned. "You shouldn't have to be." She shrugged. "That's life." Daniel hesitated, then said, "You helped my son. You didn't have to. You understood him in a way most people never try to." Marissa smiled faintly. "Kids like him. They just need patience. The world moves too fast for them, and for you." Daniel asked. She looked away. "The world's never slowed down for me." Silence stretched between them, filled only by falling snow. "I'm Daniel," said finally. "I know," she replied softly. "Everyone knows." That surprised him. "You don't seem impressed." She met his eyes. "Money doesn't tell me who someone is. Today did." Something shifted inside Daniel, something uncomfortable, undeniable. "If there's anything I can do," he said carefully. "Anything at all?" Marissa shook her head immediately. "I don't want charity." "I wasn't offering charity." She studied him, cautious. "Then what are you offering?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He didn't know. Inside the car, Eli pressed his face to the window. "Watching them, she's nice," he said. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, she is." Marissa stepped back. "Thank you for standing up for me. But I'll be okay." Daniel nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed her, as she walked away into the snow. Daniel felt an unfamiliar sensation settle in his chest. Guilt, because he knew deep down that, while he would return to warmth, comfort, and power, Marissa would return to struggle, and the world would keep punishing her for kindness. What Daniel didn't know yet was that Frank's anger hadn't cooled, and that by morning, Marissa wouldn't just lose hours. She would lose everything she depended on. Asterisk. The truth behind the CIO and TR Daniel Whitmore had faced hostile takeovers, government investigations, and market crashes that erased billions in a day. None of them made his blood run cold the way the report in his assistant's hands did, sir. Voice unsteady. "I think you need to see this." Daniel looked up from his desk. Irritation already forming. His schedule was packed. Earnings call in 40 minutes. Investors flying in from 3 continents. "Make it quick." Amelia placed the file down slowly as if it might explode. It was thin. Too thin. At the top, City Health and Labor Compliance Notice. Below it, a photograph. The cafe boarded windows. A red notice taped crookedly to the glass. Closed effective immediately. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why am I seeing this?" Amelia swallowed. The cafe was shut down this morning. Labor violations. Unsafe conditions. Wage theft allegations. Daniel's chest constricted. And the staff? Amelia hesitated. Terminated. All of them. Daniel stood so abruptly his chair skidded backward. Marissa. That's not all, Amelia added quickly. There's more. She turned the page. A statement from Frank. The owner, employee Marissa Cole, was dismissed for repeated insubordination, unauthorized food distribution, and disruptive behavior involving customers. Daniel felt something snap. This is retaliation, he said coldly. Yes, Amelia replied. And it worked. Daniel stared at the city skyline outside his window, glass towers glittering under the same sky where Marissa had walked home through snow. She stood up for my son, he said quietly, and he destroyed her for it. Amelia nodded. I ran a deeper background check in Frank in the café. Daniel turned. You did what? You told me once, Amelia said carefully, that when something feels wrong, it usually is. She slid another document forward. Frank's cafe had been cited 3 times in the last 2 years. Complaints buried. Inspectors bribed. Employees paid under the table. Threats issued to anyone who spoke up. And Marissa? Daniel asked. Amelia exhaled. She was the one who filed the anonymous report last month. Daniel closed his eyes. She tried to do the right thing, he murmured. And when he suspected it was her, he waited, Amelia finished, until he could make an example. Daniel opened his eyes. They were no longer calm. Find her, he said. Amelia hesitated. Sir, with respect, this could get messy. Media, legal, I don't care, Daniel said, voice iron-hard. Find her. Marissa's apartment was colder than the street. The heater hadn't worked properly in weeks, and now she didn't have the money to call anyone about it. She sat on the edge of her bed, coat still on, staring at her phone. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. She didn't answer. The eviction notice lay, folded beside her. 72 hours, her brother Jamal sat across the room. Textbooks spread out but unread. 17, smart, angry. They shut the place down, he said bitterly. Everyone knows it was because of you. Marissa flinched. I didn't ask for that. You tried to help, Jamal snapped. And look what it got us. She stood. Don't. I did what was right. Right doesn't pay rent. He shot back. The words hurt because they were true. Her phone buzzed. Again. Unknown number. She ignored. It knocked, came at the door. Both of them froze. Who is it? Jamal asked. Marissa moved cautiously, peering through the peephole. Daniel Whitmore stood in the hallway. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. She opened the door halfway. You shouldn't be here, I know, Daniel said quietly. But I needed to see you. Jamal's eyes widened. Is that go to your room? Marissa said softly. Daniel stepped inside, taking in the peeling paint, the thin walls, the silence heavy with stress. I'm sorry, he said immediately. This is my fault. Marissa laughed once sharp, humorless. You didn't fire me, no, Daniel replied. But my presence triggered something that exposed what was already broken. And you paid the price. She crossed her arms. I didn't ask you to fix my life. I know, he said. That's why I'm not here to offer pity. She studied him. Then why are you here? Daniel took a breath. Because injustice doesn't end when you walk away from it. It ends when someone with power refuses to ignore it. Her voice wavered despite her effort. Power doesn't change people like me. Daniel shook his head. It changes systems. And systems decide how people like you are treated. She turned away. Frank always wins. Men like him always do. Daniel stepped closer. Not this time. She faced him again, eyes blazing. You don't understand? He blacklisted me. No cafe will hire me. I'm done. Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it briefly. Actually, he said, Frank made one mistake. She frowned. What? He put everything in writing. Marissa's breath caught. I've already contacted the labor board, Daniel continued. And the press? They're interested in a story about a waitress fired for defending a disabled child. I don't want attention. You deserve justice, Daniel said, even if it's uncomfortable. Tears welled in her eyes despite her resolve. What if I lose everything? Daniel met her gaze steadily. You already did. The only question now is whether you get it back or something better. A silence fell between them, thick with possibility and fear. In the other room, Jamal listened, heart pounding. Daniel turned toward the door. I'll protect you, he said. But only if you let me. Marissa closed her eyes, then nodded once. What neither of them knew was that Frank had seen the car parked outside, and he was already making calls, dangerous ones. When the world pushes by Asika, the phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Marissa stared at the screen, heart pounding as the words unknown caller pulsed in the darkness. She had already changed positions twice in bed, already tried to slow her breathing, already told herself that fear only wins if you answer it. The phone rang again. She picked up. Hello? Silence, then breathing, slow, deliberate. Her skin prickled. Who is this? A man's voice finally emerged, low, familiar, soaked in contempt. You should have stayed in your lane. Marissa sat upright. Frank. He laughed softly. You always were smarter than people gave you credit for. Her fingers tightened around the phone. You shut down the cafe. You shut it down, he corrected. You and your little report. I just finished the job. You broke the law, she said. Over and over. And I got away with it, Frank replied. Until you decided to play hero? Her stomach twisted. Why are you calling me? To help you, he said smoothly. Withdraw your statement. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You do that and I make a few calls. You get hired somewhere else. Quietly. And if I don't? There was a pause. Then coldly, people start asking questions about your brother. About his school? About those scholarships he applied for. Marissa's breath caught. You stay away from him, Frank chuckled. That depends on you. The line went dead. For a moment, Marissa couldn't move. Her heart raced so violently she thought she might be sick. She pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. In the next room, Jamal stirred. Mari? She forced her voice steady. Go back to sleep. But sleep would not come. Across the city, Daniel Whitmore stood in his glass-walled office. City lights blazing beneath him like a sea of stars. His phone buzzed. Marissa Cole. Incoming, he answered instantly. What happened? Her voice trembled despite her effort. He called me. Daniel's jaw tightened. What did he say? She told him everything. When she finished, silence stretched dangerous. Controlled silence. He crossed the line, Daniel said finally. He always does, Marissa whispered. I told you this would get ugly. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, resolve hardening. No, he said. This is where it ends. The next morning, headlines exploded. Local business shut down amid retaliation claims. Waitress fired after defending autistic child inside the café owner who thought no one was. WATCHINGed. Daniel hadn't leaked the story. He'd unleashed it. Video interviews surfaced former employees, shaking but honest, describing stolen wages and threats. Inspectors confirmed years of ignored violations. Frank's name trended by noon. Marissa sat on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching her life unravel on television. Jamal stared at the screen. That's you, she nodded slowly. A reporter played security footage from the cafe the moment Marissa crouched to speak to Eli. The tension at the counter, Frank shouting, the country watched, kindness punished and recoiled. Her phone rang nonstop. Messages poured in. Support offers. Strangers calling her. Brave. She didn't feel brave. She felt exposed. That afternoon, Daniel brought Eli to her apartment. Marissa opened the door cautiously. Eli held a piece of folded paper. I made this for you, he said. Extending it inside was a drawing snow, falling outside a cafe window. A stick figure waitress with a smiling face. A small boy holding a bowl above it. Written carefully, thank you for seeing me. Marissa dropped to her knees, streamed freely now as she hugged him gently. Thank you, she whispered. This means everything. Daniel watched, throat tight. This is why we're doing this. he said quietly. Frank wasn't watching from home. He was watching from a lawyer's office. Rage vibrating through him as his attorney read the latest update. "They're reopening investigations," the lawyer said. "Multiple agencies." Frank slammed his fist on the desk. "That billionaire set me up." "You set yourself up," the lawyer replied flatly. "And now it's spiraling." Frank leaned back, eyes dark. "Then I'll take someone down with me that evening." Marissa's doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone when she opened the door. Two uniformed officers stood there. "Marissa Cole," one asked. "Yes, you're." Being named in a civil countersuit, the officer continued defamation. Business interference. Her knees weakened. From behind her, Jamal whispered, "What's happening?" Daniel stepped forward from the hallway. "I'm her legal counsel," he said calmly. "And this is intimidation." The officers exchanged looks. "We're just delivering papers." After they left, Marissa collapsed onto the couch. Shaking, "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I can't fight him." Daniel knelt in front of her. "You're not fighting him." She looked up. Then who was Daniel's eyes were steady, fierce. "I am." But even as he said it, his phone buzzed again this time. The message wasn't from a lawyer. It was from his board. "We need to talk immediately." Daniel stared at the screen. Realizing the battle was no longer just about justice, it was about power, and someone was trying to force him to choose. Asterisk. The life she changed for a boardroom was silent. Not the comfortable silence of agreement, but the brittle, dangerous kind that precedes betrayal. Daniel Whitmore stood at the head of the long glass table, hands resting flat against its surface. Around him sat 12 executives, men and women who had helped him build an empire, who had toasted with him at billion-dollar milestones, who knew his son's name yet rarely spoke it. On the screen behind them was a single word: Ari Scatha. Chairman cleared his throat. "Daniel, this situation has escalated." Daniel didn't blink. "Because injustice was exposed. Because you involved yourself emotionally," another board member countered. "This cafe owner, Frank Holloway, he's connected. His brother-in-law sits on a regional development committee we rely on." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So now we protect abusers because they're convenient." A woman across the table folded her hands. "We protect shareholders." Daniel laughed once, sharp and humorless, at the cost of what the chairman leaned forward. "Withdraw your support?" "Quietly. Let the legal system handle it. Your name is too big to be tied to a waitress's lawsuit." Daniel straightened slowly. "A waitress," he repeated. "That's what she is too." A silence. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased, worn. Eli's drawing. He placed it on the table. "My son has autism," Daniel said, his voice steady but dangerous. "Most of you know that. Few of you understand what it means." No one interrupted that night in the cafe. The world overwhelmed him. Sounds, lights, judgment. And one woman who had nothing to gain saw him as human. He looked around the room. She fed him, protected him, spoke up when others mocked him. Daniel's voice hardened. And for that, she lost her job, her income, her safety. The chairman exhaled. "Daniel, if this company cannot stand on the side of truth," Daniel interrupted, "then it doesn't deserve my name." The room froze. "You'd risk everything?" someone asked. Daniel met their gaze. "I already have. The moment I decided my son's dignity mattered more than profit." He straightened his jacket. "If defending a woman who did the right thing is a liability, then I resign." Gasps rippled through the room. "You can't be serious." The chairman said. Daniel smiled faintly. "I've never been more serious." He turned and walked out. The news hit within the hour. Baya Luna, ARE. CEO steps down amid retaliation scandal. Whitmore chooses justice over POWIA. Frank Holloway watched the broadcast from his dim apartment, sweat beading on his forehead. "This wasn't the plan," he muttered. His phone rang this time. It wasn't a threat. It was an arrest warrant. Aliblius officers closed in. Frank realized too late he hadn't been fighting a waitress. He'd been fighting consequences. Marissa sat at her kitchen table, legal documents spread out before her, hands trembling. Daniel sat across from her. Calm as ever, they dropped the countersuit, he said. All of either breath caught. Just like that, they didn't have a case, Daniel replied. They just wanted to scare you. Tears spilled freely now. I almost quit. You didn't, Daniel said gently. That matters. She hesitated. I heard about the board. About you stepping down? Daniel nodded. Power only means something if you use it. Right, but you lost everything, she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. No. I gained clarity. A knock came at the door. A courier handed Marissa a folder. Inside was an offer. Letter Whitmore Foundation, Director of Community Care Initiatives. Her hands shook. This can't be real. Daniel nodded. I started the foundation this morning. She stared at him. Why me? Because you understand what compassion looks like when no one's watching, he said. And because the world needs more people like you making decisions. Marissa covered her mouth, sobbing openly now. I was just trying to do the right thing. Daniel's eyes softened. That's how change always starts. Weeks later, Marissa stood in a bright community center filled with families. Children laughing, volunteers moving with purpose. Seeley stood beside her. Holding her hand too loud, she asked softly. He shook his head. Good loud, she smiled. Cameras flashed as reporters gathered, but this time, Marissa stood tall. Kindness shouldn't be punished, she said into the microphone. It should be protected. Daniel watched from the side. Eli on his shoulders. Daddy, Eli said quietly. She changed you, Daniel smiled. She changed us that evening, as snow fell once more. Marissa returned to the old cafe building now being renovated. A new sign hung above the door. The open table. A place for everyone. Marissa unlocked the door. Daniel stood beside her. You ready? He asked. She took a breath, remembering the cold, the fear, the loss. Then she smiled. Yes. Because one act of kindness had not only saved a child, it had exposed the truth. Broken systems fell. Power shifted. Lives changed. And a black waitress once silenced, once punished, had reshaped a billionaire's world forever.